Hello, Chattanooga. You're listening to All New Nooga Radio and NoogaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. You're listening to What's with Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today, making me just a small part of your day. You know that I appreciate you. So big things happening in Chattanooga, right? We got included in Hall of Fame weekend for once. Terrell Owens giving his Hall of Fame speech at UTC, and it was a doozy. And quite frankly, all that you really need to learn from this is that Terrell Owens is the rebel that the NFL needed. You need a rebel. Like, you need a rebel in your league. You need a rebel in your group of friends. You need somebody that's going to tell you the thing that is true that you really don't like when people tell you. This is what Terrell Owens did. This is what Terrell Owens did, not just in his Hall of Fame speech, which he definitely did there. This is what Terrell Owens did his entire career. Terrell Owens spent the majority of his entire career pointing at the NFL and pointing out the hypocrisy in the league, which is basically that the league is about appearing clean. The league is about appearing, just brushed up. And this is who we are. But the league makes money off of guys like T.O. What the league actually wants is more T.O.s, more Randy Mosses, more Chad Ochocinco's. I mean, the league seems to have some kind of issue with Odell Beckham, who is basically millennial T.O. He is. Everything that T.O. does, if you put that person in a millennial's body, he'd be Odell Beckham Jr. But the league makes money off of the attitude and the presence of these guys, off of their personality. This is what the league secretly actually wants. Terrell Owens, his entire career, called it cancer. But yet, every team that Terrell Owens went to got better while he was on it. Name a team that when Terrell Owens got there, the team got worse. When Terrell Owens got to the Eagles, they were stuck on the NFC Championship game forever. Terrell Owens shows up, they go to a Super Bowl. Terrell Owens goes to Dallas. They start making the playoffs. You cannot make the case that where Terrell Owens went, the teams that he went to actually got worse. When Terrell Owens went to a team, the team actually got better. But yet, he gets the stigma of being a locker room cancer and everything else. And like, which is it? You can't have both. He can't make the team better and worse at the same time. I think he made the team better. I think he had a personality. I thought the league branded it, despite the fact that the league came down on touchdown celebrations. They tried to stomp that out. A lot of people enjoyed the touchdown celebrations. That's one of the big reasons why I think in the mid to late 2000s, people watched football. Was for these celebrations, was for the personality and the flavor. Football is about spectacle. And I would argue, by the way, that a lot of sports are about spectacle. On YouTube, one of my favorite guys to watch, his name is Jacob McDonald. He's a rugby player. And he's been watching NFL videos and learning about the NFL. And it's just been an interesting channel to watch because you're watching this guy that didn't grow up with football try and pick it up and try and learn it. And one of the things that this guy's always amazed by is the spectacle of the NFL. The fact that guys celebrate after a big sack, after a big tackle, after a touchdown, after seemingly every single play, after a first down. The size of the crowds. What you need to realize is most other sports in the world, even soccer, which is internationally bigger than the NFL, they don't have the spectacle that we have. This is where the league is profiting. This is where the league has become a billion-dollar game. And for whatever reason, the league seems to also want to put down guys who behave exactly like T.O., who behave like Randy Moss. And I think that this is terrible. This is awful. This is backwards thinking from a league that's not fully considering. Look, Larry Fitzgerald is a great guy. I like Larry Fitzgerald. Larry Fitzgerald is one of my favorite players and has been one of my favorite players in his entire career. If everybody in the league were Larry Fitzgerald, it would be boring. You'd have great plays on the field. You'd have a guy that would essentially say nothing off the field. Terrell Owens gave us some great moments. He gave us some great memories, whether he was a 49er and then he just spread out on the Cowboys star, whether he took the pom-poms from the cheerleaders or he took a fan's popcorn and poured it all in his face mask. We had a lot of great memories from Terrell Owens as an NFL player. And when you look back on the game 10, 15, 20 years from now, that's what you're going to hang on to. Was this guy, apart from being third best wide receiver of all time, statistically, is also a character. That stuff lingers. That stuff matters. Like, we remember Dennis Rodman. Was Dennis Rodman the greatest basketball player of all time? He was a great defender, but Dennis Rodman wasn't even the greatest defender of all time. Great rebounder. Is Dennis Rodman the greatest rebounder of all time? Was he better than Bill Russell? But when you look at it, Dennis Rodman gave you so much more than just what he did on the court. And the fact that the league held that against Terrell Owens was wrong. And Terrell Owens, even after his career is done, continues to be the rebel that shows the NFL exactly what it is that they don't want to see. The NFL doesn't really want to see guys like Odell Beckham Jr. They don't want to see the guys with the flair and the personality. Like, the NFL doesn't really like guys like Cam. Like, look at the guys that are all criticized today. They're talented football players. They're great players. Some of these guys are going to very well wind up in the Hall of Fame. But the reason why they're criticized has nothing to do with their play. And this is why Terrell Owens was upset. This is why Terrell Owens did not go to Canton, Ohio. This is why Terrell Owens decided that he was going to have his Hall of Fame speech here in Chattanooga at UTC. He did this because he went to the committee. He talked to the committee, and the committee made it pretty clear. We didn't want you in because of what you did off the field. They're not supposed to do that. So then Terrell Owens goes and talks to the people who appoint the members who are on the committee. And the members, and they say, well, yeah, they're not supposed to do that, but we wash our hands of that. We can't control what they do, which is silly. Because if you appoint them to do exactly what the NFL Hall of Fame committee is supposed to be doing, which is saying, this is a guy's production. Is this Hall of Fame production, or is it not? And that's all that ought to matter, right? Everything else ought to be icing on the cake, or that should detract from somebody's legacy. But let that detract from somebody's legacy in the minds of fans. Don't let that take away from a guy's legacy. You didn't want him there, so he doesn't show up, and they weren't going to give him his jacket. This is how petty it's gotten. And I think that we can give Terrell Owens a pass on being petty. We've seen his whole career. He's a petty guy. But I'm not going to give the league a pass on being petty. I'm not going to give the Hall of Fame a pass on being petty. They need to be better than that. And they can be better than that. They absolutely can be better than that. I find this absolutely puzzling. They weren't going to give him his jacket. And Ray Lewis is the reason why Terrell Owens was able to get his jacket. Ray Lewis lobbied on his behalf, got T.O.'s jacket. The flight that Ray Lewis put the jacket on ended up being delayed, and someone drove the jacket from Atlanta up to Chattanooga in time for T.O. to be able to wear his gold jacket at a Hall of Fame induction. The Hall of Fame didn't want a Hall of Famer to wear the symbol of being a Hall of Famer while he was giving his speech. And like, how petty is that? The Hall of Fame's got to be above that. And T.O., I think, was also right to be pissed off because there's a standard for him that doesn't seem to be held towards a guy like Randy Moss. Randy Moss, also great. Randy Moss, also a guy that made a lot of enemies on and off the field. Randy Moss is also a guy that I think that's unfair because, again, when Randy Moss showed up, people's numbers spiked. Tom Brady had the single greatest season of his entire career the year he was throwing the ball to Randy Moss. We'd always wondered, you give Tom Brady a great receiver for once. What does that look like? Well, it was record shattering is what that looked like. That was the kind of player that Randy Moss was. And you can have Moss above T.O. if you want to, T.O. above Moss. I think that's an irrelevant conversation. Where the conversation gets to be really interesting to me is Randy Moss gets in on his first try. T.O. didn't get in until his third try. And T.O. to me is a no-brainer first ballot Hall of Famer. And Randy Moss and T.O. had the same problems. Right? Like, in my mind, Randy Moss is the better receiver. But the fact of the matter is, Randy Moss is a 1A. T.O. is a 1B. This is not, we're mincing words if you're going to try and figure out like which guy deserves to be in. They both deserve to be in on the first ballot. The fact that T.O. got in on the third
is flat out disrespectful. And he had and is having a normal reaction to that disrespect. That's what he's having. This is what you're supposed to do when you're disrespected, is not play the game. And T.O.'s not playing the game, and he's never done it. He marches to the beat of his own drum. He is very much his own guy. And for me, I can't knock it. I can't knock exactly what it is that's going on there. You're listening to All New Nuga Radio, NugaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. All the other Hall of Fame speeches. Brian Dawkins had a really great one. I got to check that out a little earlier today. I didn't see it when he was giving the speech, but Brian Dawkins and his battle with depression, and he was just talking about how he shouldn't be here. And Brian Dawkins, by the way, if you had to go down the list of inspirational NFL players, guys who just give you a speech that could fire you up, Brian Dawkins is very damn near the top of the list. Ray Lewis is up there too, because Ray Lewis just sounds like a pastor. Ray Lewis sounds like he ought to be your pastor anyway. But Brian Dawkins is like right there. If he's not second, he's third in terms of giving you a speech that could fire you up. Drew Brees is another guy. When I listen to Drew Brees could fire you up. They're just guys. Brian Dawkins is one of those dudes. You combine the fact that he has that ability, he has that quality about him, and the fact that he very much has an inspirational story, something that he has had to overcome. I feel incredibly blessed to have seen him play, and I feel lucky as a fan that these guys are the guys that are coming into the Hall of Fame. And it's interesting, by the way, because I'm 28 years old, and I'm getting to an age now where sports are starting to look different to me than they did when I was younger. Like, I'm getting to the point where the guys that are inducted into the Hall of Fame, I watched their whole career. That wasn't the case before. I could always appreciate the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, and to me, I always marveled at what it would feel like to be that guy. To have an accomplishment, to have a great career, put the work in, and then when you're done, have people recognize exactly how hard you worked and what you were able to achieve and what you were able to accomplish. To me, there's nothing cooler than a Hall of Fame ceremony, and I've always watched it with those eyes. But now I'm watching it with the eyes of somebody who's seeing a guy's career start and end, and then have that time after the ending to think about what it is that they've done before I get to see that Hall of Fame speech happen again. I mean, it's at a different stage, and it just means something different to me now. And I'm sure there's going to be another level. Like, you just start to get older and realize that sports just look a whole lot different. The players that are being drafted are all younger than you, like way younger than you. You can't relate to them. They like music you don't listen to. And then this aspect of it, which is the guys that are retiring, like, oh man, I watched that guy's whole career. I watched Brian Dawkins' entire career. I'm a Redskins fan, and Brian Dawkins was a pain in my side my whole life. My entire life. Right? Like, I watched T.O.'s entire career. I got into football, and I watched Terrell Owens go through football. And I remember those moments watching T.O. with my dad. And I remember the Super Bowl where Donovan McNabb choked. Like, I remember all of this. And so watching this in the context of some of these Hall of Fame speeches, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy to me. So speaking of Odell Beckham Jr., because he is millennial T.O., he is. You can't argue this fact. Odell Beckham Jr. is seeking a new deal with the Giants. Not at the risk of holding out. It's not as urgent as the Julio deal, but the fact of the matter remains that Odell Beckham Jr. is currently valued less than Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins being paid $16 million a year. And I think that if you're the Giants, it's a no-brainer. You've got to pay Odell Beckham Jr. And I don't think that the Giants are trying to duck paying Odell Beckham Jr. But I do think that there is a really interesting thing going on here where positions are starting to be highly valued, and NFL teams are in a marketplace. And so there are assets in the marketplace that you don't want to overprice, except wide receivers becoming one of those positions that you have to overprice because you want an elite wide receiver. You want Odell Beckham Jr., Antonio Brown, Julio Jones, but you want to pay them what they're worth. And you know they're worth more than Sammy Watkins. Sammy Watkins is currently making $16 million a year. The question is, why should you have to pay because someone was stupid enough to give Sammy Watkins $16 million a year. The entire wide receiver average, the cost of your average wide receiver and the cost of your great wide receiver, it's going up because somebody was stupid enough to give Sammy Watkins $16 million. Isn't that crazy? Like if you're the Giants or you're the Falcons, I think the Falcons, look, I always side with the players on this, but there is an argument to be made for the team. The argument to be made for the team is, look, dude, we've got other people on this squad to pay. We have other people to pay on this team. We cannot give you all the money. And I get it, because it's true. It makes no sense. You can't give one person all the cash, right? And I'll give you an example. I'll give you the Falcons as an example. The Falcons agreed to a 3-year deal or a 3-year contract extension with Ricardo Allen, right? Ricardo Allen is the starting free safety for the team. And you've got to pay your secondary players, especially if you are Dan Quinn, you're a defensive coach, you're trying to basically build a version of the Falcons that mirror something like what you had in Seattle with the Seahawks and the Legion of Boom. You want a squad that's hard-hitting, fast, fly sideline to sideline, can cover everything, just to be a matchup nightmare on the defensive side of the ball. Dan Quinn is more or less building this. Ricardo Allen is one of the better players at his position. He's netting you $19.5 million in this extension. And by the way, worth every penny. But it's hard to pay the Ricardo Allens on the team. It's hard to pay those guys when you're forking over most of the money to Julio Jones. And it makes perfect sense. You can't pay everybody what they're worth. You play in a salary cap league. And for better or for worse, the most expendable position on the team is wide receiver, because it's more likely that you can make it to a Super Bowl without an elite wide receiver than it is that you make it without an elite defense, especially secondary, that you make it without an elite quarterback, that you make it without a very solid running back, that you make it without a great offensive line. Like, wide receiver starts to look very expendable because, I mean, look at what the Falcons did last year with Julio Jones having easily his worst year of his entire NFL career. Julio Jones scored 6 touchdowns last year. Now that's not good for a guy of his talent, and certainly he's never hit numbers that low. Julio Jones, you have this guy on the squad because he's your home run bat. The bat wasn't working. I can't blame the Falcons for this. I don't think the Falcons are simply not giving Julio his money just to be cheap. I think that they look around and they go, we got to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. We made the playoffs last year in large part because we have an amazing defense. We've got Matt Ryan, who's an above-average quarterback. We've got Julio Jones, who's great. But we have an amazing defense. That's a huge part of the reason why we were able to go on a run. We can't go anywhere without this defense. But if we give Julio Jones all of our money, we can't pay anybody else. Plain and simple. And I see the same thing happening with the Giants. The Giants are already paying Saquon Barkley, their top 5 draft pick, best running back in the draft, a lot of money. But the Giants are looking down the road and going, we can't give Odell all of our money because at some point we're going to need to draft a quarterback and pay him. We've got a slot receiver in Sterling Shepard, who is one of the best in the game, highly underrated dude. He got injured last year too. We've got to pay Sterling Shepard at some point. We've got to pay Odell Beckham. We're going to have to some point pay Saquon Barkley, and we're already paying him a lot for a rookie. So we hope he's worth it. And then Evan Engram, their tight end, who is just one of the best playmaking tight ends. He was a rookie last year, and the kid's got hands. He can really ball. Evan Engram is going to be one of the best tight ends in the NFL for the next 10 to 15 years. You have to pay him too. And we haven't even talked about defense. Like, we didn't even bring up This defensive line that's aging, they're going to need to start to replace those guys. They're already paying them lots of money. This secondary that they've not always struggled with, but for the last 3 seasons, they've certainly struggled with it as well. Like, this is something that they need to address. And if you are the New York Football Giants, if you fork over all your money to Odell Beckham Jr., guess what? You're up a creek without a paddle. And in the NFL, in a salary cap league, that is the last place on earth you'd like to be. You're listening to all new Nuga Radio and NugaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. Plus with Keon Rose. There's an Alabama player who's hurt, but not in the way that you think. Next.
Traffic, news, and information. Nuga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM.
3, 2, 1.
Chattanooga Radio. Digital FM 95.3 HD4. 92.7 FM's news now.
A stolen tractor trailer rams a patrol car and officers opened fire. This according to the Ringgold PD. Police Chief Dan Milbury telling the press the vehicle was involved in a traffic stop because it was reported stolen. Multiple officers were on the scene when the driver reportedly tried to run them down. No one was hurt and the GBI is handling the investigation. A fiery wreck claiming the life of one Saudi Daisy motorist on Highway 27. Reports say the car careened off the road at 2 a.m. under the Highway 111 underpass. The driver was pronounced dead at the scene. The car engulfed in flames. Cops say the driver was speeding. Rescuers rushed to save a 15-year-old girl who plunged 50 feet into frigid waters at Rainbow Falls. Multiple agencies worked to recover her. Reports say she was awake and alert when she was found. Val St. John for Nuga Radio. News Talk 92.7. Action News now.
Chattanooga Morning News with Russ and Val. Weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. on Nuga Radio. 92.7 FM.
Chattanooga weather.
Staying quite warm and muggy out there through your nighttime hours. Lows only 70 to 72, along with some patchy late fog. For Tuesday, partly cloudy, hot, humid, only a stray afternoon shower. Most of it staying dry, highs 90 to 92. Scattered showers and storms more likely for the midweek. For lunch or dinner, come to Guthrie's, home of the original golden fried delicious chicken finger with their special world-famous sauce. Open daily, locations in Trenton, Signal Mountain, and Ringgold. Go get Guthrie's, it's always good. And I'm Soar G12, Chief Meteorologist Patrick for
Nuga Radio 92.7.
I got my business up and running and it's already expanding. I got lucky. Lucky because I found Signal Voice and Data. Signal Voice and Data can incorporate all of my business information sharing and communications seamlessly, keep my costs down, and let me work more productively with endless connectivity no matter where I might be. That's called working smart, not hard. Go to signalvoicetn.com and bring the future of communication to your business today. signalvoicetn.com.
Hey, dude, check this out. Have you ever seen one so big?
Whoa, look at the size of that.
Look at this little itty-bitty one.
Wow, that's really small.
They have them big, small, and everything in between. You'll always find the biggest variety of knives at the knife shop at Frost Cutlery in Ottawa. We're talking about over 40 brands of knives, including Benchmade, WR Case & Sons, Booker, and all the Frost Cutlery brands. Now, Sam, you've been to the cutlery shop. Is it amazing?
Spectacular. The knife shop at Frost Cutlery in Ottawa. They have knives, swords, kitchen knives, ammo, and reloading supplies, plus survival gear.
It's the knife shop at Frost Cutlery, open 7 days a week. Hey, girls, you're going to love this. We're going to the knife shop. Hey, let's not tell them they have ammo and loading supplies. The knife shop at Frost Cutlery, open 7 days a week. You'll always find the biggest variety of knives. You're going to love the knife shop at Frost Cutlery in Ottawa. The knife shop.
And tell them David Toulis sent you.
Do you hear that? That, my friend, is not what you're thinking. That is the new 2018 Indian Chieftain Dark Horse. Yeah, Indian. Indian motorcycle is more than a bike. It's an experience, an American icon. And Indian Motorcycle of Chattanooga is the only place you'll find their new 2018 line. Are you ready to ride? Join the club. Go to Indian Motorcycle of Chattanooga. Just look for the sign, 153 and Amnicola. Indian Motorcycle, the true American original.
You want more business. You want to increase your bottom line. You want to spend less on advertising, imaging your business, and general expenses. You need Trade Bank. When you join Trade Bank, you'll get the benefit of free advertising in our monthly magazine, tradebank.com, emails, and mailouts. Join Trade Bank now and receive your Trade Bank debit card with trade credits to spend any way you want. Trade Bank of Chattanooga. Call now for a free consultation. 877-2202. That's 877-2202. Trade Bank of Chattanooga.
Chattanooga Paint and Decorating would like to remind you it's so hot out there. And guess what? Your deck is taking a beating. It's probably starting to show wear. If you're hosting friends, get your deck entertainment ready with a fresh coat of stain and protect it from heat, sun, and rain with a quality sealant. If you want to get to work, Chattanooga Paint and Decorating want to help you. For exterior paint, stains, sealants, and supplies, stop by Chattanooga Paint and Decorating today on Hicks and Pike across from Valvoline or online at ChattanoogaPaint.com.
Nuga Radio.
Are you brain dead? Still voting for pathetic liberals? Take 3 hours of Sean Hannity from 3 to 6.
Nuga Radio.
Then call us in the morning between 9 and 11.
92.7
Nuga Radio.
You're listening to All New Nuga Radio, NugaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. Show as much as Keon Rose. That would be me, Keon Rose. Thank you for joining me today, making me just a small part of it. And you know that I appreciate it. I really do. Quick update about the Urban Meyer investigation. The University of Ohio State has said that this investigation will be a 14-day long investigation. They have put a cap on this, and I think that this is smart for a number of reasons. One, you really just don't want this thing dragging on forever. It looks bad for the university. It's going to be a distraction for the players and the team. The shorter this thing is, the better. But I think that 14 days is a good number also to suggest that there's some level of due diligence going on here. 14 days is a good number of time to go operate an investigation, especially something like this. This isn't Watergate. You're trying to figure out if Urban Meyer knew if his coach was involved in domestic abuse or not, and if he knew it, did he report it to the people up top? This shouldn't be a very long investigation. If Ohio State is confident that, in fact, Urban Meyer followed the procedure as he should have, then there is no good reason for them to go ahead firing him. If they're certain that he actually didn't follow the procedure, then guess what? They're going to have to let him go. This is binary. This is about as uneventful an investigation as there really ought to be. There are only two paths to take. And then, maybe suspend him. Like if he did report, but did so improperly or with not in the right amount of time, then maybe there can be some other punishment that doesn't involve a firing or letting go. And this is the reason why we shouldn't jump to judgment in these situations. I kind of did day one because all the news was flying around and I got swept up in it as well. But just looking back on it, this really is not that incredible of an investigation. Either Urban Meyer did what he was supposed to do, or he did not do what he was supposed to do, and the university can handle that accordingly. 14-day investigation, perfect. It makes sense. Do your due diligence, but don't have this thing drag on into December. It's a smart move by the university, and it puts a cap on something that I'm pretty sure everybody would like to see just come to some kind of a resolution. At the University of Alabama, there is an interesting situation brewing. Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa are battling for the starting job, and Jalen Hurts is kind of grumpy about it. The reports are that that he sounds very grumpy about it, which is a very different departure from what Jalen Hurts sounded like when Alabama won the national championship. And Jalen Hurts, from all indications, is a nice guy, very nice player, and he was very gracious in how he answered a lot of those post-game questions, even though his pride was hurt a little bit. You get pulled at halftime during the national championship game, and then when you get pulled, your team plays better without you. Look, you can be as gracious as you want to be. You could be as gracious as Tim Duncan. You could be as gracious as Gandhi. You could be as gracious as Mother Teresa. If
something like that happens to you, you are going to feel a little bit salty about it at some point in the future. And here is Jalen Hurts feeling salty about this. And one of the things that he's really bothered by is that nobody on the coaching staff over the spring and summer really reached out to him. Nobody really looked out for Jalen Hurts and asked him how it was that he was doing. That's the direct quote from Jalen Hurts. And nobody asked me how I was doing. This is important. This is important because, Alabama owes a lot to Jalen Hurts. When Jalen Hurts popped up on the scene, Alabama didn't really have a whole lot of options at quarterback. And say what you want about the limitations of Jalen Hurts as a quarterback. He's not a great thrower of the football. But I should point out that most Alabama quarterbacks are not great throwers of the football. They range anywhere from average to bad. Jalen Hurts is a slightly below average thrower of the football, and he still found a way to win 26 games for them. He is an unconventional Alabama quarterback in that he is capable of being a game manager. He can run the system that they like to run. But Jalen Hurts uses his legs. Jalen Hurts likes to take off from the pocket, and they designed runs for Jalen Hurts. And especially that sophomore year when Bo Scarborough was the main back, he had some trouble staying healthy. He wasn't able to stay on the field a ton. Even in the national title game, Bo Scarborough exited the game with an injury, which also changed the tide of how that game went down. It's tough to ask a guy to go out there and win the kinds of games that Jalen Hurts was going out there and winning, and yet he went out there and he did it. 26-2 record as a starter. Jalen Hurts has not been at Alabama without going to a national championship game. He's been every single year. Now he's a junior. He's battling for his job. And look, I don't think that Jalen Hurts has a problem with battling for his job. I think that you could make the argument that this is a case of, well, he's a millennial and he wants to be coddled and he wants people to hold his hand. But that's not what I got from this. What I got from this was Jalen Hurts is a guy that wants to know if anybody gave a rip about Jalen Hurts after what he did for this team. Jalen Hurts has put his body through a pounding, which is something that college quarterbacks do not typically do. Alabama had games where Jalen Hurts carried the ball, and I kid you not, because I looked at this and my eyeballs fell out of my head in disbelief, 20 times a game. These are running back numbers. They used Jalen Hurts as another running back. And if you have a guy who's going to put his body through that meat grinder, because he's not a big guy, you take care of the guy, right? Reach out to him, ask him how he's doing. Let him know that you appreciated what he did, because this is as much Jalen Hurts' championship as anything. They would not have won the national championship without Tua Tagovailoa. That's obvious. But Jalen Hurts won all the games that got to the national championship game. That ought to count for something. There's no guarantee that Tua Tagovailoa, a more passing quarterback, isn't going to cause more turnovers to happen. We don't know. We don't have a large sample size with Tua. I don't think that that's going to necessarily be the case because he does appear to be incredibly talented. But we don't know that that's going to be the case with Tua, that he steps in and automatically takes Alabama to new heights. That's the expectation. Whereas when Jalen showed up, he used the skill set that he had, and Alabama didn't know what they had in Jalen Hurts because nobody knew what they had in Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts got passed over by so many universities. You think Texas A&M wouldn't have liked to have had a Jalen Hurts? You think Dan Mullen wouldn't have liked to have had a Jalen Hurts? Yeah, Jalen Hurts is a good quarterback. He's a good college quarterback. If you ask me who's playing on Sunday, Jalen Hurts or Tua Tagovailoa, it's obvious Tua's going to be playing on Sundays. He's the more NFL caliber back, the quarterback. But when you look at what Jalen was able to do coming in as a freshman and as a sophomore, what Jalen was able to do as quarterback of that team, coming out of nowhere, taking the reins of this offense and going 26-2. Yeah, Jalen has his problems. Jalen is not perfect. Jalen, especially in bowl games, gets exposed. The fact that you can't throw the ball when you go up against teams who are game planning for you is a problem. Alabama's offense looks particularly one-dimensional when Jalen Hurts is in there. Kirby Smart was taking advantage of it, and that's why you had to go with Tua. And if you go with Tua, I don't think that that's the problem. I don't think Jalen Hurts has the problem that he's losing his job, or even that he has to compete for his job. He has the problem that Alabama didn't treat him better. Right? Like they tell you in love doesn't stop when you fall in love. Like there's a whole maintenance aspect after falling in love that matters. If you want that relationship to actually last, you have to keep doing the kinds of things that you did to win the heart of the person you fell in love with. Right? Like if you bought her flowers and you took care of everything financially, after you win that person's heart, you have to continue to do that. There's a lot of college football that can be compared to this, especially when it comes to the recruiting aspect of it. The recruiting aspect does not end when you land the player. It doesn't end when you have the player for 1 season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons, 4. It continues. The kind of things that you had to do to get the player, you have to do to keep the player. Very few guys are going to be here for a team promising something and then changing their minds. This is why the whole Jalen Hurd situation, the running back who was at Tennessee, now switching over to wide receiver at Baylor University, Jalen Hurd transferred out of Tennessee, and a lot of fans got on him for that until we realized the kind of shenanigans that Butch Jones was pulling. That Butch Jones promised this young man things that he never intended to do. And Jalen Hurd didn't like being lied to, so he left. This is natural. This is normal. We blame the player. And I'm not going to blame Jalen Hurts for feeling disgruntled and for feeling upset that the university that he went to, that he was a surprise player for them. He put his body on the line for them, and then they didn't really treat him right after the national championship game. And you know why? Because they moved on with him. Alabama is like the Patriots. They're like the Spurs. And all three of those organizations are like Walmart. Walmart is plug and play. Walmart is not about any one person. It's cutthroat. Same thing with Amazon. Amazon, I worked at Amazon. Amazon is cutthroat. Amazon does not care. And I read a story in the Washington Post, ironically, before Jeff Bezos bought the paper. I read an article in the Post where it was talking about how cutthroat Amazon is at the upper levels. Amazon does not care. It's very, what have you done for me lately? You're replaceable. It's the system over everybody. And I think football, you don't get to do that necessarily. You certainly can try, but there's still certain players who are going to transcend that. The quarterback is always going to transcend that. And in this case, Alabama has the ability to upgrade. Tua is an upgrade over Jalen. They have the ability to go on and upgrade, so they will. And the way they're treating Jalen is your has-been. Your old news. And he's rightfully upset about that. Because if they were going to treat him this way from the beginning, Jalen could have transferred before. And Jalen probably will transfer, to be honest with you. He's a junior, though. So that makes this tough. He's going to transfer, and then he won't be able to. He's going to have to end up sitting out a year anyway. But a lot of it has to do with how he's treated. You continue to treat people well even after your relationship with them starts. But Alabama treats its players like they're the Patriots, like they're the Spurs, and that doesn't play well on a college level. It couldn't play worse on a college level because college sports already has that stigma that they treat players and they treat athletes like they're expendable anyway. So this is just a second layer of that, and it can't feel good. I feel really bad for the guy. I do. If that's true that nobody reached out to him after that game until he got back to camp in the summer, that I feel horrible for him. You're listening to All New Nuga Radio and NugaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. That's just not a way to treat a person. So Malcolm Butler, speaking of replaceable parts, speaking of replaceable Patriots even, Malcolm Butler, the former New England Patriot, the Patriots lost in the Super Bowl to the Philadelphia Eagles, who were unstoppable on third down. Nick Foles found any target he wanted, especially on third downs. The Patriots could not keep the Philadelphia Eagles off the field. Despite all this, Malcolm Butler didn't play for the game. Malcolm Butler is now a Tennessee Titan, which is exciting because Malcolm Butler actually is a versatile player, a very solid defensive back. And the thing about Malcolm Butler is that makes his benching before the Super Bowl particularly confusing is that for throughout the entire regular season and postseason up to that point, Malcolm Butler participated in 98% of the defensive snaps. 98% in today's NFL, in which players are interchangeable and you've got a number of defensive packages and you've got guys coming in and out. For a guy to participate in 98% of the snaps that a defensive squad has is unheard of. But then to have a player participate in 98% of your snaps throughout the season and 0% of your snaps in the Super Bowl. He's not sick. He's not ill. He's not injured. So far has been reported, he didn't go out to a nightclub the week of. He wasn't partying. He didn't make some kind of crucial mistake. It was a game day benching. It was a game day decision. He didn't do any of these horrible things, or he wasn't injured or ill or sick. He's 98% of your defense throughout the season. He's 0% of your defense on the day of the Super Bowl. Everybody wants to know what happened. Malcolm Butler is tired of hearing this question from everyone. There's a story on CBSSports.com or I think it's NFL.com, where Malcolm Butler is in Atlanta's airport and he sees somebody walking up to him and he knows, which first off, kudos to that one person who seems to recognize Malcolm Butler without his helmet, because I don't know what Malcolm Butler looks like. Like, I'm not going to be able to walk up to Malcolm Butler and ask him any questions in public. I don't know what Malcolm Butler looks like without his helmet and his jersey. But you got the one fan. Somebody saw Malcolm Butler, recognized him, and started to walk up to him, and Malcolm Butler ran into the bathroom, closed the stall, and hid so that he did not have to answer the question again of what happened during the Super Bowl, because Malcolm Butler doesn't know either. The Patriots are so tight-lipped, even Malcolm Butler has no idea why it was that he was benched. It's crazy. But Malcolm Butler's a Tennessee Titan now. I think that this is a great addition to this team. What I don't know is, when will this case ever be cracked? Because it's not surprising that people are still asking this question. It's not surprising. Mike Vrabel and John Robinson, the GM of the Titans, they were asking, and they were wondering out loud, like, why is this story getting so much play? Are you insane? The Patriots were a struggling defense through much of the year, and they're easily the best defensive player on their team. They didn't play him in the biggest game of the season against an offense that had been lighting people on fire. Even without Carson Wentz, the Eagles continued right on lighting people on fire. Just the week before, the Philadelphia Eagles took apart the Minnesota Vikings, who they're a top 3 defense. They're a top 3 defense. And the Philadelphia Eagles took them apart. You would think in a situation like that, you'd play your best defensive player. Patriots benched him. And look, you don't question a guy like Bill Belichick. He saw something and he didn't like it. Even now, I'm not really questioning Belichick, despite the fact that there's a million articles and 1,000 think pieces on how this has tarnished his legacy. No, it hasn't. He's still a highly winning Super Bowl coach who's got a chance to go back again this year and every year. So long as Brady continues to draw breath on that team, Belichick will be able to take a team to a Super Bowl potentially. This hasn't tarnished his legacy in any particular kind of way, but it is odd. The reason why this story continues to exist is because we don't have answers. It would make more sense for the Patriots to answer it, just to make it go away. Except I guess now they can't answer it, right? Like the Patriots can't just up and answer the question of why didn't Malcolm Butler start in the Super Bowl, in large part because if they were to do that now, and you would be introducing a new question into the equation, which is, why did it take you 7 months to say that? Why did it take you so long to answer that question? It seems like a pretty innocuous question. You had a guy on your team. He's your best defensive player. He plays 98% of your snaps during the regular season. Then, during the biggest game of your season, the Super Bowl, he plays 0 snaps. Why didn't that guy play? Malcolm Butler doesn't seem to have any answers. Nobody else on the team has answers. Bill Belichick is not giving us anything, which is very Belichick of him. Who has the answers to any of these questions? And the more the Patriots don't answer it, the more Belichick pretends that this isn't a thing, the more curious everyone is going to get. It's going to be considered one of the great Super Bowl mysteries of all time. It has to be. There's more intrigue there. In fact, it's the same thing with Deflategate. Why did Deflategate go on as long as it did? Deflategate went on as long as it did because the Patriots just weren't forthright about a bunch of stuff. If the Patriots just came out and told the truth from the beginning, Deflategate's not exciting. That's not an exciting story. The fact that anybody thought they should slap gate at the end of that is ridiculous. It's not exciting in any particular kind of way. They just obscure stuff for no reason. But Malcolm Butler, he's a Patriot, or he was a Patriot, now he's a Tennessee Titan, and he does not want to hear any more Super Bowl questions from any of us. Just an FYI, we'll run into Malcolm Butler at an airport. You're listening to All New Nuga Radio, NugaRadio.com here on 92.7 FM. Plus, if you're host, thank you for listening. Remember, folks, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Stay clutch, and I'll see you in 23 hours.
David Lewis. I made the move 1 o'clock every weekday afternoon, 1 till 3, Nuga Radio.
92.7. 3, 2, 1.
Chatter, Nuga Radio, Digital FM 95.3 HD4, 92.7 FM's news now.
The man who drowned at Hidden Harbor has been identified as Bobby Stone, the one-time president of Atomic Films, the local production company. He also accused his wife of cheating on him with the mayor. He was charged with domestic assault, but that charge was later dropped, and the mayor denied having relations with Mr. Stone's wife. Reports say Stone slipped off a boat and drowned. The man who was accused of kidnapping was nabbed a second time. Reports say Demetrius Bailey was arrested in a traffic stop. The driver of the car motioned to officers and told them that she was held at gunpoint and forced to drive. Mr. Bailey was charged in a similar incident back in January. Rescuers rushed to save a 15-year-old girl who fell 50 feet off Rainbow Falls in Signal Mountain. Rescuers say she was awake and alert when she was found. A fiery car wreck claimed the life of one in Saudi Daisy on Highway 27. Russell Stroud, Nuga Radio News Talk 92.7 Action News.
Sean Hannity, weekday afternoons from 3 to 6 p.m.